Welcome back to another edition of the Root to Rising podcast. As a reminder, this is a platform created for women to share their stories, for other women to learn, gain confidence, and gain purpose and find their true happiness. I have two guests with me today. The first one is Catherine, who's my co-host. Also behind the scenes, she helps me with editing and also my social media promoter. And then I have Xanthe, who joins us from Australia, who's going to tell us a little bit about her journey throughout high school and then her experiences currently as she's navigating through her own journey. So with that, I'm going to throw it to Xanthe, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Christine. I'm happy to be here on the podcast, and thanks, Catherine, for introducing us and having me here. Yeah, my name's Xanthe, and I'm an Australian living in Melbourne currently. I'm here for my music career, and it's been awesome being able to create some music and also run my own small business as a freelancer and jump between the two and what that's like to be an independent living here. But yeah, I also have some roots in America. It's how I know Catherine, and I grew up in Chicago. So I do feel like I have two hearts in two different places, and so I also can resonate with people that are maybe international or are student exchange in university and things like that, and know what it's like to live away from home. And yeah, when I turned 18, I graduated and I left my hometown back in Canberra, Australia, the capital, and I started solo traveling for 3 years. So that's kind of been a little glimpse of my journey, is what it's like to be alone in the big wide world and developing my own connections, my own community. I settled in Costa Rica last year for a total of, about a year, and lived alone for the first time at 20. And that was around 50 hours away from my home country. So it was pretty intense, but also extremely empowering for me as a young woman to have that journey. So I'm here in Melbourne now, and I'm starting my career a little bit more firmly. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm at.
So were you born in Australia?
I was born in Sydney, and then I moved to America when I was 9. And I moved, to Lake Zurich and was there for the next 5.5 years. So did like elementary school, middle school, like freshman year of high school. And then my parents moved us back to Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, where I had some family at the time. And then I practically just jumped right into barista work for the next 3 years, working before school, after school. Everyone was buying cars, everybody was spending money elsewhere, and I was saving up to leave to go to Europe. So yeah, that was
Well,
kind of. Mhm.
what was it like going from Australia to Chicago and then back to Australia? Was it
Well,
weird, like
it was
returning?
so weird. I feel like the 5-year mark when you live anywhere is really a big transitional time. Like 5 years, you finally have your routine, you finally have your people there, you finally have your community. We moved because my dad got a job as theologian, and so we moved there in quite a religious community already. So the community was quite like tactile for us and really important. And so obviously as a kid, like those were core adolescent years. Like I moved back when I was 15. I still have the American accent, and I just was
Yeah.
like, I can't drop it. Like those were my core years for me. And I moved back and everyone was already formed here, and it was extremely interesting to kind of see what my identity would be like here. I'd never lived in Canberra before. It wasn't like going straight back to Sydney where we were from. So I didn't have any of my older hometown friends. So yeah, it was incredibly difficult. And my parents actually, my family had quite a intense family breakdown a month after I moved back. My parents got divorced. And so it was really a big challenge at 15 for the next 3 years that I was living there, because it was like so much was kind of forming, but so much was also kind of crumbling at the same time. But I did kind of squish my way into some really great community here. And I ended up being a part of some great friendships in Canberra, and they're still my best friends to this day, and I really wouldn't trade it. But at the same time, I had to redo a whole year. So like I did
Yeah.
freshman year, like to the half semester, and then because the years are different here, I had to redo year 9 starting from the start of year 9. And so I just felt like I was redoing all these subjects I just learned, like I should be in year 10 and be with that group. I'm now looking back on it, like I'm so glad I redid it, because the year I was with was just perfect for me in my development. But yeah, I also just felt like kind of like exhausted. I felt like I'd just
Yeah.
done that in America. Like I just moved to America and now I'm back. So it was pretty challenging for sure.
So when things were challenging, you were going through a lot. You had to redo your year of school. You had your
Mhm.
parents going through the divorce. You were back to your homeland country.
I know.
So what did you do? It sounds like you joined some communities and made some friendships that helped you through that.
Mm.
But talking to other people that may be going through a challenging time of a lot of transition, what advice would you give them, or what did you do to help yourself kind of navigate through that and not get overwhelmed and overcome by all the challenges?
Well, yeah, for sure. It's really challenging. I really lent on my friendship groups at the time, really spent majority of my time socializing, and that's a really big part of my life. I'm a big relational person, and so, maybe if the home life, or let's say like the schooling wasn't great, I could connect to people, like all kinds of people by that point. I think when a kid moves overseas and comes back, they're highly adaptable, um, and highly adaptable to getting to know different kinds of people. But me specifically, I dove into creativity. I joined a competitive dance company and I started competing in a hip hop crew at 15, and I dove into musical theater, and I was Mary Poppins in year 10, and I was able to just kind of pour everything into music and relearn the piano and relearn theater and relearn all of that, which I also did a bit of in America, but it was obviously so different in Australia, and I was so excited to just kind of keep doing that, because that was really a lifeline for me at the time, because I was so busy. I was so busy keeping my life active with those things.
Did you always know that you had a passion for music, or what age did you start to know that that was something that you were interested in?
Uh, Yeah, I started piano when I was about 5. I grew up in quite a musical household because my dad was a professional musician. He was a professional jazz musician, and he kind of didn't make it a negotiable in our family. Like, you have to learn one instrument. And my siblings kind of fell off the horse a little bit, and he made us all do band and things like that. But I stuck with piano. And then around 8 years old, I found out who Adele was, and that kind of was the start of singing. And my mom is really great with she doesn't have a trained ear, and she won't say she does, but she's got a great like pitch for harmonies. So she
Mm.
really taught me how to like harmonize with Adele, and Les Mis, which I grew up on, and I grew up also in jazz because obviously he was a jazz musician. So I admired the greats like Frank and Ella and Billie Holiday, and people with deep, soulful voices. So I guess that's kind of where it started. And then when we went to America, they got me some theater lessons, and they also got me a really strict piano teacher who trained me in classical. And I told her she was like this scary woman, and we became so close and friendly. But I said, I'm only going to do your classical piano music stuff if you let me bring you a cover each week in our lesson.
Mm.
I'll learn it on the piano and I'll sing it, and I get to perform it to you. And that's what kind of kept me at piano, was the excitement of like getting to learn covers. And I started that when I was around like, I would say like 11 or 12. Yeah, so that's kind of where I started singing more like as a hobby and stuff. So, yeah.
Do you still play the piano?
I do, yes. I have a little keyboard. It's nothing like the piano that my parents got me, which was a little baby grand, like I guess it's not little, but like a baby grand is so nice to have at that age.
Yes.
And yeah, they were really passionate about me playing piano, and I wish I could have a stand-up piano in my house, but my house is too small for that. But that would be a dream, to have an actual piano and to read music again, because I learned how to read and now I kind of lost the practice of reading. But I create all my songs on the piano and I still do covers and stuff. So it's a really nice outlet for sure.
So let's go back to high school. So you went back
Mhm.
to Australia, you did your freshman year over again, and then you're going towards the end of high school and you're
Mhm.
about to graduate. So what's going through your mind at that time in terms of what you wanted to do after high school, and how did you make those decisions?
Well, the year that I graduated was quite a big one for me because I auditioned for The Voice Australia like that summer before, and it was airing mid my senior year. So
Wow.
I was in 3 music classes at the time, and I got to kind of have a smooth sailing last year. Things had kind of quieted down and I was excited to leave for Europe, but then the season of My Voice aired and it kind of ramped up again. And it was awesome because it was so great to share that with my peers and my teachers. But I guess it kind of brought into some like identity crisis of like, should I continue kind of like people who normally I got to the semifinals, and people that get to the semifinals in The Voice normally go straight into doing gigs and kind of go all into these opportunities right after, but I didn't. Like, had a couple gigs and then I like left the country. So I feel like the identity crisis that came from graduating was like, oh, I'm so excited and I've got this kind of pillar now in my community, and I sang at my ceremony and I was given these beautiful vocational awards from this district, and I was just like really honored from the community that I'd finally created, but I was suddenly about to leave. And so I do think like the biggest thing that came from that and transitioning out of high school was like, okay, now I have to kind of redefine who I am, and I'm kind of leaping into the unknown again, just like I did years back and then years before that. It's just kind of repetitive in that way, like figuring out that that kind of never stops happening in your 20s and in your life. Like, you're constantly redefining yourself and you're constantly stepping into new versions of yourself. But this one felt really different. It felt like a core thing that I knew was going to change my life, like the trajectory of my life, and I knew I was so excited for it. And in like retrospect, I wasn't that big on school, so I was quite eager to leave and explore the world. But yeah, I would say like the identity, it kind of consumed me at that time of like who I am on TV and in front of my peers and on social media compared to who I am to my family and my close friends, and leaving the country and then being completely isolated. So, yeah.
After The Voice, I'm sure you got like a lot of attention. Was
Mhm.
that like, did you enjoy that or did you feel like overwhelmed by it?
I really enjoyed it, not gonna lie. I do think being the middle child, I enjoy like being on stage and performing and getting attention. I feel like all theater kids love that. But I was in a really small, we call them colleges in Canberra, but they're just 11 and 12. So we kind of basically in Canberra, you stop high school in year 10 and then you go to college and you do your diploma. And some people don't. Some people go and do apprenticeship or whatever. So my college like was quite small, and I actually enjoyed just sharing it with them. It was really
Yeah.
awesome. Just I didn't feel overwhelmed. I think if I lived in a city like Melbourne, or I had castmates that lived in Sydney and Melbourne, and it was kind of overwhelming because like there was a lot more feedback when you're in a big city, but I was in such a small town and Canberra's a small city. So I kind of got a lot of direct feedback, like from the Canberra Times and some like local newspapers and Daily Mail and some bigger newspapers, because I was just kind of like this small town girl. But I kind of enjoyed that. I enjoyed I enjoyed sharing it so closely. We would like watch it in music class, so it was pretty funny.
Uh-oh.
So your decision to leave the country after you graduated high school,
Mhm.
did you make that decision after you were on The Voice or before you went on The Voice?
I'm honestly made that decision when my parents got divorced when I was 15. It was a long time coming. It was quite I would say like spiritual choice, that one, because I think I struggled with not feeling like I wasn't as competent as I could be. And so
Mm.
I feel as capable, and my family don't come from a traveling family, and everyone was going to university and things like that. And I actually had quite a heavy breakdown with my dad, and I became estranged from him for the next 6 years. And so during that, trauma for me was a motivating force to get to Italy, because basically one day just this photo of Manarola, Italy came up on my screen, and I was like, that's it. I'm going right there. Like, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to spend my birthday there, and I'm going there. And I had people be like, are you literally insane? Like, that's not realistic. They use that word a lot. Or like, why would you go alone? Like, you're risking your life doing that, or things like that. Cause I was I'm like 5 foot, tiny 18-year-old girl, like carrying a 50-liter backpack. Like, it looks scary. And so I guess it was a really small dream when I was 15. I just started saving for like maybe Europe one day. And then kind of as these events unraveled in my life, it became harder and harder, pushing and pushing to actually get there and make it realistic. So it was long before The Voice. The Voice was just a fun side quest, but it was genuinely, I was pretty like, that was my dream, and my only dream for sure was to go to
So
Italy.
when people told you that's not realistic or you're crazy
hmm
or don't do it, how did you respond to them and how did you overcome it? How did you keep, in your mind adhering to your dream and what you wanted to do?
That's a great question. I think from the events that were shaping me and the events I'd already been through, like moving overseas, it just shows you a level of resilience that my peers weren't necessarily picking up on. They'd lived in the same
Yeah.
place their whole life. They were in the same comfort zone their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
That same friends their whole life. Like, when you're not thrown in the deep end, you're not asked to be in a survival mode or having to channel any resilience. So I think for me, my parents were going through a divorce, and nobody else's family were kind of going through that, especially in the Christian world. Like, so it was really controversial, and the church wasn't necessarily the kindest to us at the time. And so I was going through all these kind of like big adult things already. And so for me, like the actual look of flying overseas and doing that alone became kind of like, actually, that doesn't sound as hard as what I'm going through right now. So when people would say realistic, I would say it's not realistic for you, but it's
Right.
realistic for me. And I wouldn't live your life, so I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
take your advice personally. And I kind of just, no offense, but like, and
I
it's
like
like,
that.
No, yeah.
like my siblings and I aren't the closest. They're quite polar opposites to me, and they're quite, I would say I'm being very optimistic my entire life, and like this big drama kid, and have all this energy, and very empathetic and very extroverted. And they're just very introverted and more reserved. And I just remember like them kind of being a little like pushed back, like it sounds like kind of crazy. It sounds like she wouldn't actually do that. because it was this like pipe
Mm,
dream. But as the years got closer, especially the last year of schooling, and I would ask my manager if I could work before I went to school and then after. So that's like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then going to class and then coming back. Like they thought I was crazy, and I just kind of had this mentality that I was like, actually, this is all I have. So when you say it's unrealistic, this is
yeah,
me proving to myself that my resilience is going to be shown in an actual form of completing a goal, like not just a vision board and like maybe I'll do that one day, but actually it's planned, the tickets are booked, I'm getting on the plane type thing and
that's
making it
awesome.
actually true. So yeah, but it was challenging definitely to be in a community that like don't do that. So,
But
yeah.
I'm sure it helped you along the way, though, that you knew that was your goal and you had that goal throughout high school. That most
Mhm.
likely helped you get through the challenges that you were going through. Not a distraction, but it was like something that you could do for yourself. You knew it was the end of this high school career, that this would not a reward, but this would be kind of
Mm.
your dream to go somewhere. And it probably helped give you the confidence, even though it was hard and you were getting a lot of pushback and it was uncomfortable for you, it probably gave you something to focus on to get through the rest of it. Or at least that's
Mm.
what I'm hearing. Would you say that that is somewhat true, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think every time there was something that I didn't like or I instantly felt like back to kind of the deepest, darkest parts of myself, I would
Yep.
just say to myself, like, I'm so close to leaving or I'm so close to going to right towards my future and my towards my dream. And also like my mom was my primary carer at the time, and she was so supportive of me doing that. She was so
Mm,
supportive of me chasing my dream. But also I remember times where I would, if it's like, cause at the end of school we were doing exams and I was like, oh, this is so like useless because I'm probably going to be traveling for the next 2 years and basically get the score at the end of school here called an ATA, and it expires after 2 years. And so you can't like
oh,
go into university with an eight. You can go in as a mature student, which a lot of people do, but you can't go in with that score. And so my mom was
yeah.
like make sure you finish school strong just in case. Like keep your options open. And I'd be like, that's so silly. Like, I don't need to keep my options open. But I was really close to, going down a level, more like not doing the harder up a level stuff. But she was really like, let's finish strong and then you can go. So I'm really happy that, yeah, like pushing through that stuff when I was doing those intense
Mm-hmm.
essays or having to push through stuff I didn't necessarily think was worth it at the time. Um, I'm happy that I did have such a resilient, presence already. And I was like, let's just finish strong. And then Europe is so close around the corner. But yeah, like 2 months before I went to Europe, it got kind of brutal once I graduated. I took on a second job, so I was just doing like 5 a.m. opens as a barista, and then I'd switch the next day to a different cafe. And that's where my resilience really had to peek through. It wasn't going to school and seeing your friends and playing in music class anymore and graduating. It was like you're working and you're saving brutally,
Yeah.
and you're just like you're not seeing the light of day. I would go to sleep and like wake up to darkness. And so I was just like in the depths of it. But that was a very short period of time. So yeah, it was, yeah, I left like 4 months after I graduated. So yeah.
What did you do in between the time when you went to Europe and then you said you lived in Costa Rica?
hmm Yeah, I went to Europe for 3 months. I'd planned 3 months, so I had like literally booked everything up to a month and a half of Europe. So it was April 2023 to July 2023, and I was going to spend my birthday in June in Italy, in Manarola, like where I'd planned. And then for all of July, I didn't really have plans for that. And I was just like, oh, I'm just going to let that month just flow. Like, we'll see what happens, which I'm really happy I did. And so by the time my return ticket came, I was like, this isn't actually aligning with me. So I canceled it. and I got the money back, and I decided to volunteer in Wales on a campsite in the middle of nowhere for 6 weeks. And then I went to Costa Rica to volunteer. And I actually met my now partner there, which is a whole nother story. And finally came back in October. So it ended up being around 6 months. And when I came back, it was only for like a couple months. I went to Thailand with my friend, and then I moved to a different city. And my partner moved overseas from America because he's American. And we ended up living in Australia for 6 months in 2024. And that was a very interesting time. It felt like not where I needed to be. I didn't feel like my traveling was finished. I didn't feel like my evolution of that was finished. So I went with him back to America, and then I traveled around Washington State with him, where he's from, and went to Oregon. And I was really lucky to be with somebody at the time that wanted to show me his like state, because that was strange going back to America. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, what? Like, I haven't gone back to Illinois, and like now I'm going back to like Washington. I'm seeing all the like stores that I like used to go to, and I was like, oh, Trader Joe's, like we used to go there, like stuff like that. And I was just like, this is so strange. But he had such a different upbringing than me, so it was so interesting to experience a different side of America, and so beautiful. Like the PNW is just gorgeous. And then when I was there, I just felt drawn to go explore Costa Rica again. And then, yeah, it was one of the best years of my life living there. It was awesome. So, yeah,
So
it
what
was
makes
great.
you go, how do you know what to go next? Like you went to Wales, you volunteered. Like how do you know? And now you did Costa Rica for a year. Why not stay there if you love it so much?
Mhm.
Like what draws you to go to wherever you're going next? What decisions or what thoughts
Mm,
do you have when you make those decisions?
well, when I came back from Europe, like from the first time, I dove into online work, which was like a blessing. And I ended up working in sales online, and that's how I funded my trip. So I just want to put that out there, like realistically in my world, being, you know, supporting myself, like that was super important. If I was going to travel again, it was going to be doing it with an ongoing income. And then I ended up freelancing and working for myself years down the line. But I guess like step by step. When it came to Wales, I had been looking at Worldpackers for 6 months, and I didn't get a subscription. And I just kept looking at all the awesome opportunities, and I never took a leap and got the subscription. And then when I was 2 weeks into my Europe trip, so I was in Paris at the time, I was just scrolling on Worldpackers, and I was only 2 weeks in, and I just applied to the first one that looked really up my alley, and I had to be in the UK because of the visa thing. So like Australians can stay in the UK after going in the Schengen area. And so I was like, okay, well, it's in the UK, and I have family in the UK, so I can always go back to them. And it was like this hippie family in the woods in this tiny island called Anglesey, and it was like kind of really up my alley. It was caring for people. It was changing glamping tents. Like it was just changing linen. And I just was like, I'm just gonna apply. Like there's no harm in applying. And I normally knew like you wait a few days or you don't get accepted straight away. She literally was apparently online at the same time as me, and she accepted me straight away. And I was like, oh, okay. And I like called my mom, and I was like, I guess I'm not coming back in July. Like, she was like, it's been only 2 weeks. And I'm like, I don't know, like this feels really right to me. And at the time I had befriended my Airbnb host who I was with in Paris. He lived in the house I was in, and it was in the center of Paris. And he's like this old guy that loves jazz. So we just got on. He was great. And I rang him, and I'm like, Hamidi, look, I got accepted. He like had no idea what I was saying. He was like, he was so like, because he didn't know any English, and I was just so ecstatic. And I think like how my life has evolved is genuinely I've trusted my intuition so hard. That has been the leading force. I'm not Christian anymore, but I still believe strongly in God and strongly in the universe and strongly that I'm always being taken care of and in good hands. And I think like when that was so quick to respond, to me it felt like fate. And then a month later was when I planned Costa Rica after Wales, and I got on the call with the host. So this was in May for a September visit in Costa Rica. And I got on the call and he goes, I actually know who you are. I've seen your video on The Voice. And I was like, what the? Like,
Aw.
I was like, that's so nice. And he was like, would love to have you here. And the work was awesome. It was content creation in a waterfall company. You were hiking every day. You were filming it. Like, it was awesome. And it felt so up my alley to do something different with my time than just kind of like doing my trip of slow traveling and exploring. It was like real volunteer work and real service work. And so I really was like feeling inspired by that at the time. And yeah, I think every single decision comes from the depths of, okay, that doesn't feel right anymore. And then, okay, what actually do I know by evidence that helps me get out of this rut? And what would be that right now? So like when I came back and I was quite sad, and I actually tore my meniscus when I moved back to Australia on a surfboard. And so I was working as a barista, and they basically fired me because they're like, you can't be walking around here. Like, you can't, you're limping. And I'm like bedridden suddenly, and I'm like, I need income, and I'm going on every single online platform trying to find a job. And it was a really difficult moment for me. And luckily I had my partner with me. We were in a share house, and I had my family nearby, but it didn't feel like my place. It didn't feel like I really had a sense of community there. It didn't feel like I felt like I kind of needed to restart again. And I think genuinely those moments come from really, really sticking through the hard stuff and not distracting myself. And that means like going and using my outlets that are there. Like, I lived on the beach at the time, and so I was just at the beach, and I was just asking for guidance, and I was just journaling constantly. I remember my 2024 journal, the start of it said like, genuinely, what makes me happy? Like, write it down. Down a list of things that make me happy that I have evidence of, and like what's attainable in my eyes. Okay, not that, cross that out. Like things like that, like making it a bit more logical and firm. And it wasn't really in the hindsight for me to go back over to the US. Like I really wanted to stick it out, but I'm happy that I just kept following my intuition, and something was speaking to me that there was something waiting for me, and it ended up all working out, just kind of the brink of the moment. And so I think yeah, like even moving here, when I was in Costa Rica, it was getting to rainy season, and I had my good friends there, and basically I was doing gigs every week, and I was recording music with a producer there, and it was really a great reality. But the music I wanted to create could not be captured there. And it wasn't in the community there that Melbourne had. And I felt like, well, my landlord also was coming back. And so I felt like, okay, something's ending right now. Like, I can feel my chapter ending. And it felt like ready to go plant roots back in my home country in a different city. A lot of my Canberra friends had moved down here, and this is the capital of creative arts in Australia. So there's more opportunity. There's an R&B scene, there's a soul scene, there's a disco scene, there's a pop country scene, there's every scene you can find. And not only that, like, I had met these producers, but they were in my dance crew at my dance studio, and they had now grown up gone to music school and they were music producers, and they just happened to be R&B producers, like the ones that I need. And now we work together on music, and they produced my last single. And so it just felt like really destined to be here. But it's not been short of a challenge. Like it's been probably the biggest challenge so far, honestly. Like, and that surprises a lot of people when they're like, oh, like, what do you mean, like, moving to your home country? And like, it's everyone does that. Like, this is not as hard, or at least you have family close by. Like, no, to me,
Yeah.
this feels the hardest.
Yeah, like to your earlier point, everyone's different and everyone's heart is different. Everyone's reality or motivators are different. So back to your point, but
Mm,
you said a couple of things I want to go back to, and then I think we should spend some time on what you're doing now, for your love of music. I'd love to spend some time there. But two things you said. One, follow your intuition. I don't think a lot of women follow their intuition because within their own minds, they're already talking themselves out of it before even
mm,
attempting to make it a reality. So, I think you make it sound very easy. Follow your own tuition. What guidance would you give people? And it's not even about the people around them that are telling them no. A lot of times
mm,
it doesn't even get out on that piece of paper. It doesn't even get out to tell another person because they're convincing themselves out of it. So, what would you
mm.
tell younger women, high school, college, or even experienced women if they want to do something and they feel it as their gut instinct or their intuition? How do you follow that? What gives you confidence to follow that?
Mm, mm. I think I think the biggest thing is we subconsciously, naturally, the human brain wants to be sitting in a comfort zone. Naturally, it's cozy there. Naturally, it's the best place to be there. You're around
Hmm.
people that you've known your whole life. Or even when you go into, like, let's say, like, you go to a brand new university, like, that's so far out of your comfort zone. But although you're following kind of the natural progression of maybe what society's falling, like pulling you in, that to me is still some sort of comfort zone. And so I feel like for young women, it doesn't start with big, bold life decisions. It starts with daily active habits of, okay, I'm going to go to a movie alone. Okay, never done that in my life, and I'm going to go and do that. And it's putting yourself out there when you don't want to. It's asking for help when you really don't want to. Like, to me, closed mouths don't get fed for me. And I think like the biggest thing for me was consistently speaking and asking and socializing and connecting with kinds of people. Like when I was traveling and I needed help, it's just me alone. Like,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do? Am I gonna sit there and cry and let
Yeah.
myself ruin my day? I have to go out and ask, and I don't know the language. Like, it's extremely, um, it's really hard. And so I think it doesn't start in big moments like that. It starts in your active day-to-day life, and that means like you see a girl at the bar and she's like by herself, and it's just go up and talk to her. And it's like, how
Hmm.
would you feel if, you saw yourself and you're out of your body and you saw yourself and she's feeling kind of a little alone and self-conscious and like she can't take a leap? Like, that's how you need to treat yourself, and you look outwards into yourself. And that's to me is what following your intuition is really listening. And sometimes that
Yeah.
can just be like, I feel like it's in the smallest habits of just really listening to what is true to you. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all to do that when you've fallen into daily life of a routine that feels
Yep.
comfortable to you. But I'm just saying, like, it's different. It can change at any time. Like, I think that was the biggest shock to me, was like my reality can actually shift at any single time because I made a different choice, and it was the better choice for me. Like, I would
Yep.
rather spend years and years and years and years getting to, feeling more and more uncomfortable than spending the next 50 years feeling just so comfortable and like I never did anything out of my comfort zone. And so I feel like that is the biggest thing, is just it's in the daily little things. It makes you more
Yeah, I
confident.
agree with that because a lot of people want to do, like to your point, the big thing, and they try to plan for the big thing, but they never practice to get to the big thing. So to
Yeah.
your point, go to the movies by yourself, go eat at a restaurant by
Yeah.
yourself, be comfortable being by yourself, right? So
Mhm.
teach yourself some of those small steps. It doesn't have to be 0 to 100, and that's with anything, right?
Mm.
You have to train yourself to be uncomfortable. Another comment you made is you made that list of what makes you happy, and then you said you found you'd looked at the evidence of what made you happy. What's the evidence? What defined evidence for you, and what did you look at to say, oh yes, in this time and place, this is one of my motivators that makes me happy? What does that mean, evidence?
To me, evidence is basically meaning reaction. And so if I'm swimming and I'm enjoying myself and I'm getting out of the water and I instantly feel positive, I instantly feel like I can go and do more things out of my comfort zone. I felt like genuinely, okay, that makes me feel my best self, you know? And so I guess like the evidence is what makes you feel like your best self, and then continue to use those outlets. Is that going into nature? Is that dancing? Is that like the creative pursuits in your life? Like what does that feel like when you're truly your best self? And for me, like I know that because I did have to go out and practice those things, and because I kept doing them and because I felt so joyful after and felt like an inner child was being treated to, that to me felt like the evidence of the best parts of me, because of my reaction. If I'm doing something and I'm feeling drained, negative, like tired, that's not something that, like, it's like doom scrolling. That's not real rest. Like something like that, you know, like that's actually not
Yep.
beneficial to you or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, those aren't the better parts of me, you know? So it's including with people. If I'm leaving a conversation or a group of people and I feel worse about myself, or I feel like I had to impress them, or I felt like
Yep.
I had to get on their good side, or I felt like they're pessimistic, I don't want that in my life. And so it's the same. And I feel like to me, your rituals in life, like that evidence, those are your rituals in life. Those should be sacred to you. You know, no one should get in the way of doing those things for you, like get in the way of you doing that for yourself. And so it's like the same for me with the people you let in your life. That's really sacred. And so, yeah, I guess it's just protecting your peace. I got it tatted. So,
That's your
yeah.
tattoo, is protecting your peace.
Yeah, I have a lot of tattoos. I have
That's
like
awesome.
flower growing out of like a woman's body, and it says still growing. And I have
Aw.
protect your peace on my arm, and I have like energy on my arm, and I just kind of, that was, yeah, I turned 18, I just kind of went crazy with the self-growth tats for sure.
But so to go back what you're saying though, it is a
Yeah.
feeling. When you do something that
Yeah.
gives you energy, you do get this euphoric feeling,
Mhm.
and you have to find that feeling. And a lot of times women may feel, or females feel selfish if they have, or at least
Mm.
maybe I'm going to speak about my generation. I'm 51.
Mhm.
So a lot of times it's pleasing people, is constantly making other people happy, and you come last, right? And
Mm.
so it's, how do you prioritize your happiness and find your motivators, and protect your peace, because you get energy, and at the end of the day then you're a better person for everyone that you want in your life, right? So
Mm.
I think that's an important, from a younger generation person, to say that. And it's okay, and you should look for ways to give yourself happiness, and the people around you that don't appreciate that, then they're probably, to your point, not people that you should be around that give you energy. And women have to be okay
Mm.
with that, versus having to please everyone and get that acceptance from everyone. That won't give you energy at the end of the day.
Mm. For sure. Yeah, I
So
think
let's go
mhm.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do really find that as well in the older generation, is that a lot of it is like of service, or
Yep.
yeah, like you were putting into words, like even like looking at my parents, like I wished they had taken bigger chances on themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like for
Mm,
their sake, because it's so important for your development. And I do think like generations and generations, women have been the village. And so for me,
mhm.
like they have to upkeep the village. And so if one
Mhm.
villager steps out and suddenly goes on a solo trip, they're suddenly looked down upon of,
Right.
oh, you're not upkeeping the village, you're upkeeping you. And that's
Correct.
in a modest society, and in a society that's supposed to be humble and down to earth, like, and for everybody else, it's seen as selfish, but to me, it's not selfish at all. And to me, self-love is selfless. And so for me, I think that it's really important, because you can't pour from an empty cup at all. Like it just doesn't
Agreed.
work. And so you see your mothers, your grandmothers just empty at the end of the day. Nobody wants that, you know?
Nope.
Like,
Nope.
yeah, for sure.
And then they have all the what ifs in their brain.
Yeah.
So let's transition to music. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now with your music, and what your plans are for the future. And then I know you also have a company you created on your own, a virtual assistant company. So let's hear about what you're doing now.
Sure. I'm kind of still in a transitional period of developing my community here and getting to know people. I think I was quite shocked of how big this city like coming from
Mm.
like small towns. I'm just like, oh wow, okay, there's so much to tap into. It's a lot. But I'm really in the moment right now of this is my developing era. I would say I'm writing, I'm getting to know communities, I'm getting to know the connections, I'm going to gigs, I'm listening to music that I've never been a part of, and I'm doing interviews and getting my name out there and my name seen. So I would say like that's kind of the era I'm in. And when The Voice came out, I was 17 and I went straight into my last year of school. And so I do feel like a little imposter syndrome. But at the same time, you come to Melbourne and every second person has been on The Voice. And so you're just like, hey, you
Oh,
know
wow.
what? You're not special. Like, you know what? You're special in your own lane. And so that's what I'm kind of
Yep.
figuring out now, is what my own lane looks like. It's pretty diverse, and it doesn't look like one specific genre. And so I'm just playing around. I released a song in November, and that was really awesome. It was about long distance and my relationship, and I've sung really intense, sad songs in my life. And so this was really awesome to put such happy energy of the last couple years into a song. It had a big band feel. It was a soul song, kind of like Olivia Dean, Ray style. And so I think the next step is to develop a project like an EP, so like a shortened album, and have all kinds of songs in there that kind of just shock the audience. Maybe there's a jazz song, maybe there's another pop song, maybe there's something like more of a ballad. I kind of don't want to keep myself in a box. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where I'm at, is like redefining fun for me, not putting so much pressure on music here. I just want to have fun with it, and I think that should be the main intention, because when you get lost in the industry, it's exhausting, and it makes you feel like you're comparing your life to others, and I've already done that here, and I'm just realizing like I just need to have fun. I need to have fun with music, and that means going to gigs and dancing and
Yeah.
meeting people that could down the line like be a part of my life and change my life. So, but that's when you land somewhere for a long time, it's an ongoing process. So,
Yeah. What's the name of your song that you wrote in November?
it's called See You at Home, and it's on all streaming platforms. And I did like a little DIY music video. I reached out to, there's a huge national radio here called Triple J, and I reached out to them maybe 16 times, and they they played my song. So that's awesome.
Yay.
Normally first songs are like first or cuz I'm rebranding completely. Like I've already put out some songs as Xanthe Campbell, but I'm rebranding just as my first name. And so
Okay.
to do that is like a totally fresh new slate, like whole new Spotify profile, whole new artist profile, whole new everything, whole new aesthetic and everything. And so I really tried to push on to maybe if my song suited Triple J, because it may not. And the show that it was played on is normally like EDM, like pop. And so for her to listen to it and actually enjoy it, that she wanted to play it, meant a lot to me because it kind of stood out like a sore thumb. And I was like, that's so nice. Like, she really liked my song, and I was really shocked, to TBH. So it's just to kind of keep exposing and keep doing those follow-ups, which made me feel, sometimes annoyed at the end of the day or less confident because Triple J is huge here. So yeah, that was cool.
I just want to give you credit because you in your whole life have continuously put yourself out there to keep going. Like you said, you sent that in
Thank you.
16 times, and that's helps people like my age be like, okay, well, I'm going to apply to that job as many times as like I can in the year. You know what I mean? Like for you, it's music, but for me, it's like something in the business world. And I think that's really important for people to hear.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an endless cycle because I'm also in a transition point of my life in business as well, where like when I did create my own business, it was significantly online. It had to be online, so because I was living in Costa Rica. But now that I'm here, I'm like, actually, I'm really great at being in person, and I haven't had the experience to connect in that way. And so now I'm in a new era of life of applying to in-person jobs. And it's a constant, it's a rejection, redirection. It's a constant, okay, like that's a no, but this might be a yes. And you're right, like it's exhausting. Like honestly, after this call, I'm gonna go sit down on my desk and apply to a billion others. But it's at the point where it's like there has to be something out there for you. And if not, maybe you can just create it yourself.
Yeah.
Because when I was
like
in
that.
Costa Rica and I was like not enjoying my sales job, I happened to be around a ton of beautiful digital nomad women that had their own business online. And I kind of was mentored like, oh, you actually can work with women and you can work with anyone you want if you learn these skills. And then I became a freelancer, and by March I had 3 female entrepreneur clients who I was working for: a holistic women's coach, a UGC creator, another fashion creator that I was working for alongside, and it turned into also social media management on that end of that side. And so it just kind of kept going, and I was just like, wow, that's crazy. But I like probably wouldn't ever been able to have the confidence without also the other women around me that were older than me and were mentoring me. And I was really, really lucky to have that for sure. Yeah.
So, Xanthe, it's been a great conversation, and maybe a question for each of us. Catherine, I'll give you a question to ask, and then myself to wrap it up, because I think we've learned so much here. Is if you were to give some pieces of advice, it could be anything, to a younger generation of women or our generation, of either to gain confidence, to take risks, to be yourself, anything, what pieces of advice would you give them in order to help them do that?
For me, like the big, I guess, because I want to word this like to a point where it doesn't necessarily offend anybody or doesn't go out of, because each to their own, to BH. Like,
Yeah.
that's the biggest, honestly, that kind of is one of the biggest points of advice is don't get stuck in ego of I deserve this or I deserve that or hyper independentalism, because each to their own. At the end of the day, somebody's life is great for them. But I guess the biggest point of advice about taking risks and being out of your comfort zone is at the end of the day, like all you have is yourself and what you've done with your life. When you are at the end of your life, you're never going to be upset about how many chances you took, or, oh, I'm so sad that I went out every night of my life and had the worst time. Like, no one ever says that. What they say is like, I wish I went to Paris and saw it in spring, or I wish I took that job instead of staying home, and stuff like that. And or I wish I moved to that country when I had the health to, And so I think, like, for me, I don't want to live in regrets. And so I think the biggest point of advice was trust your intuition like it is your fairy godmother, and like she knows what's best for you. Because at the end of the day, what your heart is telling you, your brain might not understand. And sometimes you have to trust it, and that means walking with a blindfold. And so at the end of the day, trust that you're in good hands, and trust that everything will work out for you if you consistently believe that you have the ability to do that, and that you are competent and you are capable. And that's not mean by the grace of other people, or like the confidence through somebody else or someone else that's there with you. It's completely your own. I do feel like every single young woman has the confidence through her blood. In my opinion, I think it's passed down in generations. I think women are the most powerful things, honestly, on the earth. And so what I've seen women do is astonishing. And it starts with the fact that we are the people that birth life. And so I think, like, because, don't fall into that trap that you're less than. You're more than, and even more than you think. And so I think, like, the possibilities that can come from that are endless. Big advice is really hold on to your intuition, because that voice speaking to you is sometimes all you have. And so it's all I had when I was alone and in the deepest, darkest times of Europe, where I was climbing a mountain and it was storming and I thought I'd be lost up there and possibly die or something. And the voice that came to me was, let's stay here. Let's stay here and let's watch the rain, and let's sit in this cave, and it's scary and it might die out. And 30 minutes later, it stopped raining, and it was just, it's like it knew and was listening. And so I think, like, things will work out for you if you let it.
That is some great advice, Xanthe. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Catherine, any last questions for Xanthe?
I don't think so.
No, this was a fantastic conversation. You have so much advice to give, and all of your experiences for such a young person. Your wisdom is profound. So thank you for sharing all your stories, and congrats on your song. If you're okay, I think we should put it in the notes, Catherine, and make sure everyone listens to it.
Oh.
So again, thank you for joining us. This is the Root to Rising podcast with Christine Hummel and my special guests today, Catherine and Xanthe. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, guys, for having me.